making a round centerpiece today. Round centerpieces are a staple of the design world and are typically the first type of arrangement that new designers learn to make. We'll be using hot pink cabbage roses, cream peonies, and I have some plum mini snowball bushes, as well as a variety of greens, including clover and also some hydrangea leaves and buds. And before anybody asks, the hydrangea leaves that I'm using in this particular piece are discontinued. They've been discontinued for almost 2 years now, so there are no more, ever, anywhere. I have a few in my own personal stash, and you'll never get your hands on them. The first centerpiece I ever made was a round centerpiece. Why? Because it's easy. Well, easy after you do a few of them. Anything that you try the first time is essentially going to go wrong and look like crap. But with anything, a little bit of practice is going to make it perfect. We're going to be using the tried and true pie method or clock method or whatever you want to call it. Just imagine a pie that you cut in half and then you cut in half again and then you cut that half in half and so on and so forth until there is nothing left. We're starting with our largest flowers and then we'll be graduating down to our smallest flowers. You're going to be finding center for this. Put your first flower dead center, and then your other 2 flowers you're going to put on either side of that. And those side flowers just go a little bit shorter than your center flower, not much, because you're going to be bending them over so that they take up a little bit more space. Then you're going to come in with 2 more of the same flower and put them on the opposite sides of your center flower. And by the time you get done with this, you should have a lovely cross shape. This is what's referred to as your framework. Pretty simple. Easy, right? Some would argue that my framework is not yet complete, that I still have a few more steps to do before my frame is done. I completely disagree. This is it. This is all you need. This is your frame. End of story. Now your frame is done. It's time to have fun. From here, you can put any flower anywhere and your arrangement is going to be beautiful. The only thing that you need to do from here on out is just split the difference. You're putting flowers in between all the other flowers in your arrangement the rest of the way through until you either run out of flowers or you run out of space or you just run out of energy. Your second set of grouping of flowers do not all have to be the exact same height. They don't have to be even with each other. They also do not have to be even numbers. So see right here, I have a space. So technically, I should have 4 if you're following the designer playbook on how to do round centerpieces. I should have a 4th one right here, but I'm not going to put a 4th one there. You know why? Because I don't have to. That's what I'm saying. These centerpieces are so easy. And you really just need that one simple part of your framework, and then you just keep splitting the difference all the way through. So what I'm doing now is I'm just adding in greens to start taking in some of that space. And I do work my greens from the center out for these types of centerpieces, just to see how much space they're going to take up and how much empty space I have left over to fill with florals. The reason that I do this is because a lot of florals can be expensive. It can start adding that price tag up. Greens are expensive too, but these are really big greens. So they take up a lot of space and I use minimal product to do so. When I am putting in large greens like these gigantic hydrangea leaves, I do shift and move the leaves to maximize the amount of space that they're going to take up. By adding greens midway through the arrangement, it also prevents me from flower crowding, which is something I see a lot of designers do, especially new designers, because when you're making these, you feel like you just have to just jam pack it filled with every type of flower in the world. Not saying that that's wrong or it's a mistake, it's just not necessary to achieve a beautiful, full, lush centerpiece. When placing these greens, I am still following the pie method. I am going directly into those spaces that have been created by my original frame. At this point in the arrangement, again, you can use anything that you want and it doesn't matter. It's still going to look pretty. Technically, I could go in and put in my next flower, which would be those plum snowball bushes, but I'm choosing to use my clover next. It's big, it's lacy, it's a different shape than those hydrangea leaves, so it's perfectly fine. I am going in and still using that pie method where I'm kind of splitting the difference in between, and I'm also popping this into spaces where the hydrangea leaves missed coverage. This is important because technically I could get another stem of those hydrangea leaves and cut them up and fill in those empty spaces, but as I said in the beginning of the video, these are sparse, they're discontinued, and I only got 24 of them and I'm not wasting them. If I can fill in those spaces with another type of green or floral, I'm doing it. I'm using my last floral, which is the plum mini snowball bush. And notice this spot is the same spot that I pointed out earlier that technically, if you're following that rule book, should have been a peony. This is my biggest tip for making natural looking centerpieces. If I had used a peony there, it's going to look too mechanical and stylized. By using a different flower in that space, it now looks a little bit more natural, free-flowing, but still balanced. This is how you break from the beginner playbook. There's nothing wrong with being a beginner and doing everything technically correct all the way through. It's a valuable part of the learning process. As you grow as a designer, you will start to become more comfortable with doing things a little bit different than the norm. The other secret to making a fresh, natural looking piece is to make sure that you tip the heads of your flowers. These particular flowers, if they were out in the garden and in your yard, the heavier the bloom, the more weight it has and the more the heads tip over. So you'll see that throughout this piece, I am tipping heads over as much as possible, which also gives movement to the piece and alludes to it being fresh and alive. Now that we're finished with adding all of our florals, we're just going to go back into this piece and fill in with the rest of our clover and just make sure we don't have any empty spots or big obvious holes. The other thing that I use in this centerpiece is one of my favorite greens, which is a really delicate, lacy looking green. It's just called a budding bush, but I think it kind of looks like little bee balm that you have out in your yard. And it is one of my favorite bushes. And I do have those available on my website for purchase. And there it is right there. That is my most favorite green. I use that year round. They're kind of on the short side, but they're beautiful for adding a nice, soft, lacy layer. I'll even pop these in to where they are deeper into the arrangement instead of sticking out like some of our other greens, because it does add a little bit of depth and dimension to your piece. Keep in mind when you're doing centerpieces, they are meant to be viewed all the way around, typically on a dinner table, and people are really close up to these pieces. So having those little tucks of interest, like this particular green, is super important because it does help to lift the other flowers. My other tip is to use as much as you need to make the arrangement look beautiful and full. I know I talked about cramming too many florals into your piece, but what I mean by that is knowing when it's excess and when it's necessary. It is very necessary to cut open another bush of greens if it needs it to make it full and beautiful so that you can maximize your profits if you're going to be selling it. There's no need to make a skimpy, squatty little arrangement and try to sell it for, $80 when you can put one more bush of greens in it and make it look full and beautiful and sell it for $200. This piece sold within 5 minutes of listing it on my site, which is crestedperch.com.